Hey everyone, it's Joe Waxman. I'm here with Lynn Chittick. Is that how you say your last name?
Chittick.
Chittick, yeah. She's been macrobiotic for a long time, and she's been involved in the macrobiotic community doing things. And I don't know a whole lot about you, Lynn. So, first of all, hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm just coming back from Santa Cruz. I'm in the middle of a drive and I'm grateful to be here. I apologize for being on the road, but it's been great to have the beautiful weather here in Santa Cruz and it's been a lot of fun. So here I am today.
Great, great. So, I wanted to ask you about your story, as I always do with everyone I'm interviewing. I want to hear about your macrobiotic journey, where it all began for you, and yeah, so take it away. Tell us.
Thanks. My name is Lynn Chittick. I go sometimes by Mama Lynn, named by children many years ago. I started macrobiotics in 1987. And my first cooking class came out of right after my third child was born. I had hemorrhoids, believe it or not. And I went to the health food store and Jim Tyler and Stacy Tyler were running the store.
Can you tell me where you were living at that time?
Yeah, Monticello, New York.
Okay.
And I had my third baby. And, you know, he was a 10-pound baby. I had already been working with Rudolf Steiner's ideas. I had been studying Waldorf education. So my story kind of began with environmental wellness. And so we started eating organic in 83. So by the time I went to this first cooking class, our house had been, you know, well adversed in, you know, dietary changes, a lot of different things due to allergies in my first child. And then my second child was born with brachial plexus damage. And then my husband came up with allergies. And then I became diagnosed with a breast tumor in 1986.
Oh.
So in 1986, I continued to breastfeed my second child and then was going to give birth to my third child. And I had inklings of the natural food movement, but I didn't know anything about macrobiotics. And Jim suggested I come to their cooking class. So the first cooking class was all about dairy and dairy food and looking at, you know, cow's milk and the idea of cow, you know, ending their nursing career after a year with their young cows, you know, with the baby calves. And Jim and Stacy just like immediately made sense, you know, spiritually, emotionally, physically. And within a month or so, I met Michio at the Brown Hotel. And it was quite the journey from there. Michio met me and he and I ended up, there were probably 500 people in the room and there was one seat left. And I sat down and Michio came up and sat beside me, which was kind of interesting. So we started off right at the bat pretty connected. He immediately asked me, like he does many, please come to the Kushi Institute. And so at that point, I started really delving into a non-dairy macrobiotic diet. I took cooking classes, but I really dove in, you know, really creating, I would say, a macrobiotic diet, but very narrow. Mm-hmm. Probably too narrow for somebody big in the beginning of macrobiotics. Macrobiotics in my early days immediately took off by feeding my children miso soup and the natural way of living in the early mornings, you know, miso soup, greens, brown rice every day. And so I got a little bit stagnant in the first couple of years of macrobiotics due to that, I think, just because I was eating pretty narrow. But the gift is that all the allergies in the house went away. Every sickness of colds and flus and everything went away. And one of the stories my kids tell is, Mom, you got rid of the pierogies. And I used to make, you know, farmer cheese. I was kind of a farmer in my early years. So I grew all my own food for my family. And so I was a homesteading mom. And I had a lot of festivals at my house, so I was cooking for many, many people right off the bat. And so it was a really magical start for the first 3 years. And then I went deeper. And Michio and I started working, from the idea of getting rid of this breast tumor. So I was getting, diagnoses from other counselors. I had a couple of, I'm trying to think who my early counselors, I guess Jim and Stacy, but there was a young couple and I was trying to think of their name before this interview. But the couples, Jim and Stacy and this other couple and myself and my husband, we just started meeting all the time for dinners and gatherings, and I invited them to our house for festivals, and we just, started being in community. And so I learned a lot just by being in community in the early days. And out of that came this relationship with Michio, just hearing about him. But I read his book probably in 1980, I would say 88. I read One Peaceful World, and I wrote him a letter. And I wrote him a letter because the book really touched me. And I had been studying a lot of esoteric type ideas. And I believe deeply that this letter spoke, to him specifically to say, this is the only way society can get back if people come back and cook in their homes. And I saw that immediately. And he actually called me. And the one day that he called me, my husband said, Michio Kushi's on the phone. And I was kind of like, what? And so he called me and we talked, and, we were very close from the beginning. And I think it was that sparked me to get to the Kushi Institute. And, by 1990, I was cooking for others and really started studying deeper levels of macrobiotics. And I went to the Kushi Institute on a journey to still heal this breast tumor. I felt quite sick the third year in. And I was diagnosed with this tumor, but I was never Western model diagnosed. I was modeled from, a clinic that said your tumor is about the size of a golf ball and we need to go deeper and get a biopsy. So I talked to Michio, I talked to others, and I just kept going with the diet. And I think I'm trying to think what year. My breast tumor discharged, what we would call discharged, which means that the breast tumor was gone in the late 1990s. And it was kind of like a miracle moment. And it was a really deep moment of reality for me. And so for me, I didn't go the normal route that many macrobiotic teachers did, which takes classes, because I had 4 kids by then. And I started learning from people around me, the couples that were involved with our lives, as well as cooking myself and learning cooking. And my first dive in was spiritual training with Michio and Aveline. So my start was with Lino and Jane Stanchich. We all gathered there. Warren was in our group. What's Warren's last name? I know you
Warren
know.
Kramer.
Warren Kramer and I started together. We were all in that spiritual training together. And I did 10 levels with him. I did go down and study with your dad, Denny Waxman. And did his training at Strengthening Health. But the mystery of macrobiotics for me came in the gifts of getting to Japan pretty early on. I got to go to Japan with Jojo Sawa's 100th birthday. At that point, Michio and I were quite...
Lima Osawa.
Yeah, Lima Osawa's, her 100th birthday, excuse me. And all the great teachers were there. It was wonderful to meet them all together. I took pictures and we had fun. And at that point, Michio said, I want you to start studying with Jomyo, which was Aveline's teacher, Reverend Tanaka. So Reverend Tanaka and I started training together. I went to Vermont and did deeper spiritual training with him. So I started Shingon Buddhist training. I really took off. Aveline was always so funny training me. And she was like, I said, Aveline, I grew up Christian. I said, I don't know about these Buddhist chants. I'm too Christian. And she said, no. Macrobiotics Jesus is right here in front of me. Jesus is in front of you. Sound is just sound. And I'll never forget that moment of turning in my spiritual path. It was a really rich moment because Aveline and I, she was kind of a strict teacher to me. She was very disciplined and I was very loose, and I've always been, kind of like the black sheep, and I didn't follow this whole regimen. But one of my, one of the spiritual trainers that really touched me was a Naoki that used to do the miso in the basement at the Kushi Institute, Naoki. And I'm trying to think of our wonderful cooking teacher, and you'll know all these names because you've been, grown up around this. But
Yeah.
I went downstairs during spiritual training and just cooked with them to make the meals instead of just wait, because I was very much hands-on mother. I just sitting around and doing spiritual training was great, but I wanted to be hands-on and learn. And so it was really, really wonderful. And then Michio wanted to offer us a building. He called me one day and he said, I want to offer you the Stagecoach building in Beckett. So my husband was a golf pro, and we had moved quite a bit at that point. So I was dealing with a husband that was working on chemical fields, and when I found out all about the chemicals and the environmental awareness around golf courses, it was like my main mission was to get my husband into an organic golf course situation, right? So there was this goal between, environmental awareness with chemicals, having a golf pro as my husband. And all of a sudden Michio said, why don't you come to Beckett and we'll give you this building. My dad was a really strong builder. So my dad, I invited him to come and see the building, the Stagecoach. It was, I don't know if you know that building. It was on the top hill that they owned right near the Kushi Institute. And it was a really big moment for me because we chose not to take the building because it needed too much work. But right around the corner was a golf course, a par 3 golf course. And it was so funny because immediately I said, here's your golf course. And it hadn't been used for 7 years. So it was so much fun because it was like, oh my gosh, my husband's dream, right? A wife always wants to fulfill the husband's dream. And we had already been working on this, and we had tried to do a natural putt course, a golf putt course. And he was going to teach, he was a PGA golf pro. And instead, I chose this golf course. I said, no, we've got to move to Beckett and we'll start the golf course. We'll create this, par 3. It was 45 acres. It was a par 3 course, and it was beautiful. And it was a farmhouse. And we immediately started growing gardens there. And Michio, I will never forget the day he came into the Kushi Institute store and he said, I need to talk to you. And he was very stern, and I had never seen him like that with me. And I said, what's up, Michio? And he said, you are not here to run a golf course. And I said, what do you mean? I said, this is my husband's dream, He said, you're here to help people. And it was a really funny moment. During that time in Beckett, it was really, really special. And that's when, after I got to go to Lima's birthday party. But the Beckett house became my big training ground. I started taking cancer patients in by 1993. And so we turned that house into a really magical house. Lino came, his daughter lived with us with his grandchild, people from France and Holland. And, we were kind of the Beckett kind of house that wasn't as strict as the Kushi Institute. And Kripalu Yoga Center was a homeschooling community. So I got involved in the homeschooling community there with my kids. And they asked me to train Kripalu Yoga Center. So I got to train Kripalu Yoga Center in natural cuisine. They all came to the farmhouse, the golf course to train. And so I did that with Gail Jack. I worked with Alex and Gail in their home. I did some cleaning and cooking for them. And so that was really great. And I also worked for One Peaceful World magazine with Alex and Ed. And I think, there were many, many spiritual moments throughout my course of macrobiotics. And one of one of those memories, during spiritual training. Michio was training about sound. And to this day, I've been teaching about the soundboard. I just finished a master's in theology. And the soundboard for me made a lot of sense because I really believed in
What?
I'll tell you about it. Let me continue.
Okay.
It's
Go
called
on.
the soundboard.
Yeah, go on.
So Michio's spiritual training, he taught from the ancient understanding of Yaikushi. You probably heard about Yaikushi before. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
Okay, great. So this is a great story for you. So Yaikushi is the family shrine of Michio Kushi in Wakayama Prefecture in Japan.
I think I did hear about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so by the time I got to Japan, I had studied a lot about Yaikushi through spiritual training. And the soundboard is the sound, Michio taught it. It was called the soundboard. It was Adam's rib, he said. You know how Adam in the Bible gave the rib to the woman?
Yeah.
This rib was actually sound. And so this really sparked my interest because sound was so important to me. Chanting was important. I was like a dedicated chanting student by then. I studied with Reverend Tanaka probably 2 or 3 years before I took those classes. And it had just been really, really a deep journey for me. And going to Japan was so funny because all year I said to my husband, I'm going to Japan this year. I know I am. And he said, we don't have the money to go to Japan. I said, no, but I'm going to Japan. He said, no, we don't have any money to go to Japan, Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
And I go up to the Kushi Institute and Michio was there. And he said, by the way, we have 2 more tickets to go to Japan. And Nippon CI is going to sponsor us. Mm-hmm. And so I was on a plane in 10 days going to Japan. Nice. It was so funny. So I got to go to that beautiful ceremony. And that trip really touched me because I wasn't on the trip with the trip that Michio had actually planned with the group of people. I was on a separate trip with Nippon CI. So we slept on the floor at Nippon CI. We were with George Osawa's grandson. We were with Yamaguchi. We were with some of the old time macros. Junsei from out here, he made umeboshi plum. He had the umeboshi plum farm here in California. So Junsei was on that trip. It was quite really stunning. Who's the barefoot shiatsu wonderful woman? Shizuko.
Shizuko. Yeah.
Shizuko and I became very, very close. And, she taught me a lot. I started doing shiatsu when I got back from Japan. But this idea of macrobiotics was embedded in my soul life that was so rich. But one of the funny parts is I had chanted with Aveline. I had worked with people. And by then I knew the Heart Sutra by heart. And I knew all of these chants. And Michio that night came to me at the birthday and he said, I want you to go up north and I want you to visit this shrine. I said, okay. So I went on my own on the fast bullet train and it was about an hour, I think it would have been west maybe of Nippon CI. I'm trying to think of Tokyo. And I got to go to this amazing shrine, one of these beautiful Japanese shrines. And these women were chanting. They were probably on their 25th Buddha. There were 100 Buddhas and they were doing the Heart Sutra 100 times. And that's what you did at the shrine. You chanted the Heart Sutra. And they were probably in their 20th Heart Sutra. And I chanted every single Buddha with them. And they were shocked. Now here I am, an American woman, and I'm chanting by heart, the Heart Sutra. And they're like, who the heck are you? And it was so fun. And they took me up to the high mountain after, and they gave me green tea. You know how matcha is so bright and green? Mm-hmm. This bright green I'd never seen ever in my life again. I'll never forget this bright green matcha. But they served me tea and cookies, and we couldn't speak Japanese together. But here I knew the Heart Sutra, and that was one of my high points. But some of the work that we did in Japan was, there were 3 weeks of pretty powerful journeying. we got to go down in Wakayama Prefecture, which I didn't even know. And one of my main goals was to go to Michio's family shrine. And I didn't know how I was ever going to get there. And Shizuko said, I'm going down to a miso factory. Would you like to come? You know, after our tour got done. And I said, yes, I really would love to, because I don't know what else. I think we had probably 5 or 6 more days left. So Shizuko, and there was one other woman, I wouldn't know who that was, but the 3 of us got on a bus, and we were all by ourselves on this bus going down through these mountains. And it was so funny because we were the only ones on this huge bus. And Shizuko said, we're going to stay overnight at this one area, and, you know, please, you know, we can just stay together, and then we'll be at the, you know, the next day we'll get to the miso factory. I said, great. So we stayed overnight, and they drew the bath. And I don't know if you've been to Japan, but, you know, I was just treated so much like a queen. You know, you get the bath drawn at night, you get a beautiful robe. And it was so amazing what happened. It ended up being where Yaikushi Shrine was. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm here. And it was, I didn't even know. And she said, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you. And I said, I can't go to the miso factory. I'm staying here and going to the shrine. And she said, are you sure? I'll call Michio's cousin and he'll come pick you up. And I said, no, I have to stay here. So I stayed there all by myself. And his cousin came and picked me up and brought me over to the shrine. And at the top of the hill, you could hear this big gong, gong. And I followed the sound. He just dropped me off there. He wasn't with me. And I started walking up the hill and following this sound. And when I got to the top, there was Michio and Aveline. Aveline's ringing the gong, and it was Michio's tour with all of the people that were paying a lot of money to be with Michio and Aveline. And I had no idea that they were there. You know, it was just like I appeared out of nowhere because I wasn't on their tour. And it was like one of the most funniest moments. It was like, Aveline's like, where did you come from? And so we got to go in the shrine with Michio. We did a tremendous amount of prayer and work. And I can go esoteric sometime with you. I won't with this interview, but I experienced a lot of spiritual healing at that shrine. I experienced a tremendous amount of sight, you know, through that whole time period. But I had been born with, you know, more of a spiritual sight. And so it was a really special moment for me. One of the other times that was really special was going to Georgia Sauer's birth town, which was, I should know the name again. I'm sorry, I'm going blank. This is my good memory of macrobiotic.
That's okay. I don't even know his birth town. I mean,
yeah, it's actually where Kuan Yin has a huge shrine. You know, the goddess of Kuan Yin. Yeah. And that night was really magical because I had no idea. We were on our personal, you know, tour. Reverend Tanaka was with us. There were other people with us that were on our tour. And we were going through these streets. We're all like on the back street of a Japanese town. And I'm like, where are we going? And they said, we're going to a special dinner. And I said, great. Well, you know how you have the cloth coming down, and you might know what it's called, but it cuts off half of the room before you enter a room.
Oh yeah, we have a bunch of those. I don't know what they're called. I can't remember. I know.
They're beautiful. I had them in my house too. But anyway, Reverend Tanaka went in front of me and he bowed down. So I went and bowed down, you know, and then sat back up when we got through. He kind of crawled through and bowed down. So I just followed lead, right? And sure enough, when I stood up, there was Michio and Aveline again. And this was like 2 hours from Tokyo. I had no idea they were going to come to this dinner. I had no idea they were going to be part of this dinner. And there was a spread of macrobiotic food. This table must have been 30 feet long. And the macrobiotic food, all these dainty dishes all the way through. And it was one of the most special dinners. And what I mostly probably remember is the sake being poured. You know, Junsei's pouring sake on one side and Georgia Sawa's grandson on the other side. And we're just like, but what we were told is why we came here to the planet. So I crawled into this room, I woke up, and here I am standing up in this room, and it felt like a dream. It felt like why we were there. We were told why we came to the planet, why we were, what we were doing here to help humanity. And there were only about 25 people there. And it was a very serious meeting. was a very serious meeting. And so for me, I took it very serious. Junsei had introduced me to some very powerful people. You know, the whole trip was kind of this spiritual awakening for me in a different way. You know, I had been a mom, I had been training spiritually, I'd been doing a lot of work, but I think the Japanese trip catapulted me into another layer of what I was up to and how I would, you know, continue training. And it's one of the turning points in my macrobiotic consciousness. You know, macrobiotics means large life, as we know, right? But most people were following Michio to a T and following food and dietary changes, and they're all wonderful. And I see your dad is a very high teacher. I think his knowledge and his wisdom is very strong on counseling. I didn't counsel that way. I started counseling serious cases by helping ancestry, by helping people really look from a spiritual level of what was actually going on for them. And then I'd go into diet later. So I never followed kind of the rote ideas of macrobiotics. I kind of went in a different view. And, you know, I trained at the Kushi Institute. I did a lot there. But I also ran the kitchen for a while. You know, I'm kind of, like I said, the black sheep of, you know, counselors, but I really took off with my training when I got back from the Japanese trip. And I'm very grateful for those years. I'm very grateful for the time spent with some of the higher teachers in the spiritual work of macrobiotics, because they had worked with many different teachers. But, you know, the highlight of that, the birthday party was very telling. Michio was on stage with all the top teachers, with George Osawa, and Michio's thinking was very high, very spiritually high compared to, you know, they were having this discussion, should they import brown rice or not into Japan? That was the big discussion that night. And the discussion was so clear about food and the spirit of food and the understanding of food and the high quality of food that we need as a humanity to be able to survive, you know. And so this was my path. This was my path, and it was just amazing. You know, I have many stories about Japan, but those are probably some of the highlights. And, you know, going into teaching and counseling and helping a lot of people, I became kind of my own specialty with environment and macrobiotics in general. So I was really a specialist in environment healing. So a lot of people with environmental sickness came to me in Ithaca, New York. I started a store in 2002, right after 9/11, and bought my own house, and we had dinners. You know, I did macrobiotic dinners. My house was always filled with people. You know, we'd have 40 to 50 people, and I'd have lectures. And we were talking with Alex the other day, and, you know, Alex came, and we did a lot with GMO foods, did a lot of work on GMO foods. So those years are precious to me. I had my own summer camp starting in 2003. We had our own summer camp, and I think you know, some of those turning points, I remember calling Alex in 1995, and I said, Alex, can I start counseling? There's really serious cases coming to me. And he said, yes, start counseling. And
what was your summer camp called?
It was the Kiraku Organic. I'll have to get you that. I believe it was.
No,
yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know right now. You know, it's been a little while.
No,
I've gone through a lot
no problem.
through those journeys. You know, I've gone through a lot with those journeys. Yeah. But I started at 38 becoming a doctor, and I started taking courses because I was working with really serious cases. I got to fly to Fermilab with a woman that had cancer, and she hired me out of Kripalu, and I cooked for Gurudev when he had yeast infection. So I was cooking with more fervor for health instead of just cooking. Starting in about 1995, I was taking on those serious cases. And that's when I went through a divorce. as many of us have in the whole macrobiotic community.
Yeah.
And it wasn't an easy divorce. I had a pretty tough divorce. But the store itself in 2002, there was another layer for me of wanting to learn more, wanting to understand. And I never made it to be a doctor because of my divorce, but I did become an RN. I'm a registered nurse.
Mm-hmm.
I've been working as a nurse for 12 years, but I've used macrobiotic principles all the way through my counseling of nursing patients as well. And even though I'm out in the field, those principles are always with me. I'm working with people pretty regularly. But around 2008, I moved out to the West Coast. I got involved in French Meadows for the last time. I think it was 2 years before they left the camp, the original camp. So that was kind of fun to see the original camp at French Meadows. I had never met any of them out here. So they were all like, who is this lady? And so that was kind of fun. And, just kind of moved back in. And I came in and out of macrobiotics after my divorce. I stepped away from Michio and Evelyn, didn't really see him almost for 10 years. And I saw him the last year that he was alive in 2014. It was good for me to step away from macrobiotics as long as I did to do what I needed to do for me, because it gave me my autonomy and where I wanted to lead people and what I wanted to do with all of the knowledge that I'd been given from this amazing journey that all of us have. It's quite the stunning placement for me. And moving out here it was a really challenging time to move out all the way across, because I'd been, doing the 4 seasons back in the East Coast.
Lynn, hold on. I want some clarity.
Sure.
What do you mean? What does it mean to leave macrobiotics for you? What does that mean?
I didn't leave macrobiotics, but I left the community of macrobiotic friends. I left to study theology, and I left to study a theological look at macrobiotics. I didn't get involved in cooking classes. I stopped cooking classes after my store. 9/11 happened, and we opened up the store right after that. My cooking school, I had a cooking school, I had a sustainable store, I had, environmental products, I had organic sheets and composting toilets. And because of 9/11, the crash really happened right after then, the financial crash. And so I lost about $85,000. But I did create the first sustainable bag on the market, which was organic popcorn. So you can see that on Kirako Organics. And that came out of another, environmental work that I had been doing, knowing that plastic and all of the nice organic food that was being made, a lot of it was being wrapped in plastic. And so I started working on how can we create food without plastic. So I did a lot of that work and counseled with Alex and Ed. I counseled with, just my own experience with my family. I was a farmer's market vendor, so I did macrobiotic meals and was a farmer's market vendor. Cornell University was very prominent to me. That was a really powerful time.
Where are we? Like, where are we talking about? Are you in California now? I'm not sure.
I know there's a few different layers. I skipped.
Well, I'm trying to find the chronology of where you're talking about. Like,
yeah, let me step back. So in 1999, I was in Ithaca, New York, and Michio and Aveline were invited to come to Cornell through my organization, which was.
I thought we had gone to California.
I know, I didn't. I missed that little link.
Okay.
I missed that little link, but I think it's an important link that they got to come to Ithaca. I got everybody in Ithaca to gather around to say, let's bring Michio and Aveline here. And they came, and I raised $12,000 and paid Michio $9,000. I remember, and the team got $3,000, and it was like, but this event was really special as well. It was right before I opened up the store, but this idea with Michio coming to Ithaca was very powerful, because again, there was a building that was for sale, and Michio wanted me to run this building and have a macrobiotic center in Ithaca. And right before the event, we're washing windows, and the lady of the house said, yeah, we're selling our house. I said, oh, I want to buy it for a macrobiotic center. And she's like, you don't have any money. I said, no, but I really want to buy this. This would be perfect for a macrobiotic center. And within 3 days of this event, Michio goes and said, I want to meet with the owners of the house, I want Lynn to run this macrobiotic center, you know? And it was so funny because everybody on the team didn't want to work for Michio. And Michio and I just were like, we just started like saying, what are people thinking that we want to work for Michio? You know, we were working for macrobiotics. And so this is the other idea of macrobiotics. People were thinking that they were working for Michio instead of working for the larger whole. And I think Michio got pretty sad at that point, but we did a lot of good work in Ithaca, you know, he and I. And, you know, the store opened up right after Aveline died. I'll tell you this little story. This is kind of a fun story. Aveline died and I was at her funeral, and about a week after she died, I had a dream called the Cookie Dream. And it's actually in the newspaper in Ithaca. I have the clippings of it. And it was a dream that every town would have its own cookie, and that all the farmers would be provided for by people buying this cookie. So we'd have a farmer growing, you know, sunflower seeds. We'd have a farmer growing flour. We'd have a farmer growing, you know, getting maple syrup from the trees. And this cookie would, you know, supply the farmers with enough money to survive. And that cookie dream happened where there was a couple that were counseling with me, and they gave me $10,000 to open this store. It was like that, you know? So a lot of magic happened in macrobiotics for me, a lot of magic. And I think that's the gift. You know, Michio always talked about that North Star. And it's what I counsel a lot now. I counsel people to follow the North Star. And so we're going to catch you up to now. You know, I moved out to California in 2008. Like I said, I moved out with my RN license thinking there would be jobs, and nobody, right after the 2008 crash, nobody was hiring new grad nurses. So I was without a job. I was like, oh my gosh, I just left, you know, my whole certified kitchen, which I had had for 20 years. And I was just like, now what, you know? So I really started over in a lot of different ways with a number of theological ideas around macrobiotics. I went back to the theological underpinnings of spiritual training with Michio and Aveline. And I really believe that their theology was a very prominent part that a lot of people were missing. It was something I wanted to train with people in Beckett, but nobody was interested. You know, the palm healing, the healings that Michio did in circle with us during those spiritual trainings are really something I've brought forth in my work. And went to the Franciscan School of Theology. Francis was very dear to me. Francis and Claire were both really dear to Michio and Aveline. We had talked a lot about St. Francis, and I think when you start looking at some of the theological rule of life, when I went to my first master's, I did my first master's in multicultural pastoral degree. And at the Franciscan School of Theology, the rule of life is so macrobiotic you can't even imagine, you know, and we held all of the documents at the Franciscan School that were traditional documents from St. Francis. So I learned a tremendous amount. I was part of the GTU, which is the Graduate Theological Seminary, and I got to take classes in the Buddhist tradition and the Hindu tradition and the, you know, all different people at the Graduate Theological Seminary.
Let me stop you for a second. Where is this in California?
Yeah, this is actually in Berkeley, California.
Okay.
And so I started in 2009 and graduated in 2011 with a master's. And again, my master's was sustainability for the 21st century. And I had done a lot of macrobiotic work on the ground out of Oakland, and worked with the homeless and worked on how we could bring people from the bottom up. So spiritually, how do you bring some of the issues that we're seeing today with homeless, with poverty, with racism, and put that into my thesis work in my master's degree. So sustainability for the 21st century was my thesis, and came out saying, okay, now what? And, you know, I was kind of at the end of my degree, I was like, what am I going to do? And went back to nursing, worked in nursing for 5 years, and have been working on an organization called Humanitera, and did a startup in the Bay Area. Humanitera meant people of the earth, and creating a macrobiotic circle approach to understanding a social good, right? A social wellness for the humanity. And so I went to see Michio right before he died on 2014. I have this organization that hadn't quite taken off. I was working full time as a nurse. I was still dreaming about it. I was going to a lot of sessions. I trained to be on the radio and started a table talk radio show, table talk healthcare, because I thought, well, what if you started a table talk healthcare so our healthcare system can be more macrobiotic, more circle approach. And so I did a lot of those type trainings for 5 years. And then I just got kind of really wrapped, I would say, in almost like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here in academia? I felt like people in academia were just following the path. I thought that macrobiotics was just following the path. I'm like, why aren't people being independent and spiritually, independent? And I think, there's a handful of people that are independent in macrobiotics, but it's interesting just watching people follow what Michio and Evelyn did, but not really stand on their own. And I think one of my biggest wants for macrobiotics is to see the larger picture and not just about food. It's got so many different layers to it. And I think after COVID, we've all seen it. I think it's been amazing what's happened with COVID now. I went back into Michio died in December, and I had another dream. Okay, Evelyn dies, I have the cookie dream. Michio dies, and I have the torch dream. And the torch dream was name the organization The Torch. And I called Alex immediately, and I said, I had this dream. And I said, I think I've got to change the name of my organization to The Torch. He said, that had to have come from Michio. And I said, I know. Because Michio always said we had to go spark the world. We had to go spark the world. He was going to go over and spark Japan. He was going to go spark UK. He was going to go spark Spain. He was going to go spark Portugal, and he was always telling me this. And so I changed the name immediately. My good friend Joel Woolner, I don't know if you know Joel, but he started Osawa.
I know.
And he's been at the forefront of macrobiotics with all of them. But he lived around the corner from me here in Fairfax, California, and he and I see each other all the time. We have tea pretty often, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And we helped with the acronym together. And the first acronym for TORCH was the Organization for Realizing Change in Healthcare, which Humanitarian was really kind of a healthcare based. And the funny part about it is that the H in TORCH changed to humanity after I started working global. And that came out of the mystery of, working with people all over the world online. I started doing another degree. I did a master's in divinity, and it came out of an accident. Somebody ran into my car in 2015.
Hold on. Lynn, I feel like you're jumping all over the place. I'm trying to find you. I don't even know what's going on. What is Torch, and what do you do?
Sure. So Torch, that's what I'm getting to. Hang in there. So Torch is the Organization for Realizing Change in Humanity, okay? So just really realize that Torch has 4 pillars. It has peace, health, environment, and technology. Those 4 pillars are based in macrobiotic principles of unifying principle. So for me, I wanted to look at the larger picture of macrobiotics, and I wanted to look at understanding how we could make humanity in a whole different role other than just calling it macrobiotics, but looking at it from a unifying principle idea. So everybody needs peace. Everybody needs a good environment. Everybody needs a good healthcare system, which is food for all of us, but food and health in general. And everybody needs right now, since this name came, was technology. We were working on technology. I was doing Facebook Lives. I was doing spiritual training on Facebook Lives. And then I met a man from Pakistan, and his name is Rayhan Alawala. And Rayhan said, I want to help you. Your work is, really, really powerful. I want to support you. I said, great. So he started introducing me to people from Pakistan. And I started meeting people from all over the world with him. And what happened is Torch took off. And I supported Pakistan. I went to Pakistan for the last 2 years. I started the first sustainable school in Pakistan. I'm starting the whole natural food movement in Pakistan. There were no health food stores and nobody was talking about organics when I got there. People, there was a woman that talked to me and she had intestinal issues. And I said, let me find a macrobiotic teacher in Pakistan for you and I'll give you a jingle back. And I found out there wasn't any. And I was really sad. And there wasn't a health food store so I could get good food to her. And I said, this needs to change, you know? So that's kind of what happened with Pakistan.
You're reminding me of Mona Schwartz. I don't know if you know Mona, but she did something similar in India. She tried to bring macrobiotics to India.
Beautiful. Yeah, I know the name. I don't know her, but I know the name.
She's passed now, but.
Yeah, and so it's just been an amazing ride. One of the men that sponsored my trip the second year just started an organic food business, and I lectured on the UN level for Sustainable Development Goals, which I've been involved with solar since my store back in 2002. My store actually sold solar panels, and my son had started installing solar panels when he got out of college, out of my store. And so there's been a huge movement again for creating a whole sustainable aspect to Torch that has kind of taken off.
You cut out again.
Oh, shucks.
I'm gonna pause recording for a moment. Oh, there you are. Never mind.
So anyway, this is kind of what happened with Torch, and it's been really wonderful to have Ed and Alex and Bettina lecture in the last few weeks because it's kind of come full circle. You know, it's been years since I've been working with them. It's been years since I've been working with any of the macrobiotic community. You know, I've dabbled in watching and seeing what people are doing, but I haven't been engaged in a way that, you know, most of the macrobiotic teachers have just stayed in there and taught, but I went a little bit different route, you know. So it's been really fun. It's been dynamic. Where it stands today is that I'll be going back, I think, for 3 months. I've got an opportunity.
Going back where?
To Pakistan.
Okay.
I'll be leaving for Pakistan hopefully in August, if not 1st of September. This trip will be, the first year we had 100 orphans and we had about 25,000 kids on that trip that joined in with schools that wanted to learn about the Torch. And so 25,000 kids turned into 55,000 kids in Pakistan and 14,000 kids in Africa at schools and doing school programs that was teaching around food and health and environment.
So you're teaching these kids what? You're teaching them about food?
Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit. The 4 pillars, okay? All right, the 4 pillars: peace, health, environment, and technology. Okay? Food is key to all 4 of those areas, right? So what I realized is that most of the food in Pakistan right now is getting infiltrated with GMO seeds. So GMO seeds from the USA and the China government are coming into Pakistan. Pakistan is one of the largest agriculture lands that we have in the world. So the first year I lectured in agriculture schools, I lectured in businesses, I lectured in schools, I lectured in universities, I lectured in some other, you know, local area regional called E-Pakistan. I lectured in a number of places, and my team members were already active, so they already knew my mission and my vision. And so the mission of Torch is simple action for global change. Simple actions for global change. So that mission has taken off to build a 4-person team in your town. So if you were going to pick one of those pillars, Joe, which one would you pick that you were most passionate about? Peace, health, environment, or technology? Which one?
No, I'm still trying to figure out what you did with 50,000 kids in Pakistan. So
yeah, we're working it. We're working it. Trust me. It's gone up now to 70,000 just in the last few weeks.
What are you doing with the kids?
So what we're doing, okay, is I lectured in front of 200 administrators the first year. The second year, we're getting an online platform so that people can teach from an online platform. It's called Torch Academy. And we're going to be teaching administrators to help kids grow organic seeds, heirloom seeds in the schools. And the heirloom seeds are being grown here in America as well. They're being grown in Africa as well. And so Torch Seeds is a company that is teaching around the 4 pillars: peace, health, environment, and technology. So all based on unifying principle. So that's what I'm up to. It's a big dream. It's grown organically. We have the 3rd top peace promoter in the world, Kasrat Rai. You can Google him on, any Wikipedia. You can find Kasrat Rai. Haji Khan Faroch joined our team. Tomorrow is our 3rd anniversary of Torch. So we're going to be online tomorrow morning. You can learn a lot more about the Torch family.
So let me try and steer this, because we don't have endless time. What do you think about the macrobiotic community in regards to the modern world? How do you think, first of all, what do you think it lacks, and what do you think it needs in order to grow and evolve?
Yeah, macrobiotics, I believe, has to understand it, that it's not just food. In order for it to grow and expand, it has to be brought in. And so the schools that we're building are based on, say, a chemistry class. Michio put the elements into a spiral. The spiral of the elements is going to be taught in schools, in the Torch schools. So we've had a tremendous amount of understanding in the personal lectures that I've had across the country in Pakistan that's very open. And so the kids will be discovering ideas and new ideas. And so when I look at macrobiotics, this is what I've wanted to do for 25 years. Michio and I talked about it, about building schools with unifying principle. And I think we have to move into the modern world without food and sickness. We have to move into the modern world with a really new spark, a new way of thinking, a new way of understanding that fit this into everyday life and everyday living. We have been stuck on food and sickness for way too long. And
well, different people have taken it in different ways. I mean, I don't want to lump everyone into a big homogenous grouping.
No, of course.
Stereotype thing. But,
yeah, of course. But I think when we start looking at teaching, you have to build it into your local area and your local region. And I think, Alex is doing great work in the hospitals with diabetes. We're doing work in Pakistan and Karachi with Diabetes Project and research. The health part, Torch Health, is really about science, okay? Torch Health is really about building a table talk healthcare plan. So I'm a nurse. And when you look at dietary consultations, you've got to bridge healthcare workers with alternative medicine, or we're not going to go anywhere in healthcare. You see this with COVID, and you've got to bridge it in a way that is very academically sound. And if we don't bridge it academically sound, I think we're going to be off the bridge again. And I think when you start looking at science bridging with politics, it's very clear now with COVID, you can see this. And so I feel very fortunate. I got to see a lot of different regions of our hierarchical structures in America. I got to work for the largest oil and gas company called AES back in 2001. And I got to go to the top meetings in Albany, New York with all the top oil and gas producers of the world. And out of that comes this idea like, oh my gosh, look where we're headed. And you've got to look at it from the politics and how will we infiltrate. I think there's some really great teachers that are going into politics, which is very exciting, Macrobiotic Friends. I think we've got to bridge it out into the regions of all those different hierarchical structures, including healthcare, including politics, including understanding. And one of the funniest things after Aveline died, I went for 3 years in a row and grew flowers on the house in Brookline. I'd go for Aveline's birthday. No, sorry, Michio's birthday. And I brought flowers and I planted them in the yard. And it was the 3rd year that I went there, and before the house got sold, and Michio invited me in, and we sat down. He said, look, I want to show you something. I said, what is it? He said, Michio Kushi. He holds up this plaque, Michio Kushi, the best Democratic businessman in the world. And I said, Micho, what are you doing in the Democratic Party? He said, wait, look. And he held up another plaque. Michio Kushi, the best Republican man in the party. And he told me, he said, you have to look at both sides, both of these. He said, I had to get to know what Democrat and Republican was. Otherwise, I couldn't go up. So he went up in both of those parties, and he went up to study them both. And I think if macrobiotics is going to go anywhere, we have to bridge that and develop this so it bridges into a very good structure so we can start supporting it. And I also think it has to come up through the children right now. I do believe that the children of the world need us to be witness of this amazing gift that we've all been given, And so the kids that have been infiltrated, I can only hope and pray that enough teachers come in right now to the torch and really start teaching at all these schools and start building a world understanding of how we could educate from a living education. The education systems that we have are dead, as we know,
Yeah, I think, educating children is a big part of where things need to go. I said that before, and so I fully support that. I love that. I do want to wrap it up because I like to keep these under an hour. I just want to, so Lynn, just, briefly, I don't want to keep this running on, and I know you can just keep going, but what final message, just the biggest message for everyone listening, what is that from you?
Keep a smile on your face. I was just around some Mayan elders. I've been in spiritual circles of many elders from different traditions. And I think we're going to face some serious issues as we move forward. And I think we have to get disciplined in a way that we work together. And I believe that if we can come together into the dream of supporting humanity through this next wave, there's supposed to be 2 more waves of pretty heavy duty sicknesses coming. And I do believe if we don't pull together, it's an interesting time. So I think it's time to pull together and really bridge what we've been given. And I think people are doing it. I think, we're lucky to have a health food store in every single town, pretty much all the way across. Right. And to be eternally grateful for what we've been given. Eternally grateful.
Yeah. So, that's excellent. I agree. I feel completely inspired to spread the message. That's why I'm doing these. I want to bring give a voice to the entire macrobiotic community and bring them all together and do my part. That's what I can do. Yeah.
Great. What's your dream? I always ask, what's your passion? That's what I ask everyone I meet.
My passion? I wanted to spread health to the world. The idea of health, the idea of healthy eating, and not just health, of course, but I want to live till 150. So I want to come from that perspective. I think, we should start having a new bar for macrobiotic teachers. You have to be over 100 in order to consider yourself a macrobiotic teacher. Then we have 100 to 150-year-olds who are not doctors, but they have their own health to say, look, what we have works, so we have all the proof in the world. So something like that.
Interesting. So the Mayan elders last night at the fire said, you've got a choice now to either stay on the planet or leave. And that the galactic relationship to the convergence happening in Ojai, California, there's some really powerful things happening there. So you might want to check that out. But when you look at what your dream is, I want you to follow it to a T, but build it from a joy.
I gotta say something about dream. That's Michio's terminology. It's not my terminology. I don't really think like that, and I think dreams are for sleeping. I'd rather find the truth, and in the truth there are no dreams. So I don't necessarily come underneath all of that. I mean, I respect Michio and Osawa immensely, but I don't necessarily just take my ideology straight from Macrobiotic books. I mean, everything has to be vetted for me, and I don't really resonate that much with the idea of dream because I think dreams are for sleeping, and I'd rather be awake. So
Interesting.
I hate to put a pin in that one, but that's what I'm.
You don't have to. You don't have to feel that. No, I think dreams are, for me, there's an awaking dream in macrobiotics, and it's an awake dream that gives us an opportunity to live each day in this moment, to be present, to be healthy, and to be vibrant.
Very good. I mean, everyone's got to have their own way of seeing these things, and I just, I gotta really, since you put it in those terms, I gotta speak my mind. But I do want to wrap it up because we've been just about an hour, and I think these things can get a little too long if we go.
I jumped on you a few times, and I appreciate you just following the dream, but I'm so passionate right now about what I'm up to, and I love what I'm up to. I love my life. My kids are amazing. I've raised them without antibiotics. I've raised them to love the environment. I've raised them to be open to any tradition, any religion, any race, any people. They've lived with people from all over the world. I am eternally grateful for all that, and they're going to make a mark on in the world as they already have. So that's pretty magical. So that's probably what I did best, was mothering. And in 2 weeks, I end 39 years of mothering. My youngest is moving out of the house August 6th, and it's been a powerful journey. I have no idea what's next, where I'm headed and what I'm up to, except
nobody does.
Holding the flame up.
Very good. Lynn, it's been a pleasure. I enjoyed hearing about your story. You seem to have done so much that I couldn't even fully keep track of it all, but good for you. You did a lot, and you'll probably keep doing a lot, and we'll probably keep hearing a lot about you. So I thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah. All right.
So nice that you're doing this, and you keep that going for all of you that are students of parents that did this path. It's pretty cool to watch you move ahead in this path. So thank you so much.
I just want to correct you there. I'm not a student of my parents. That would mean they're my teachers. They're my parents, like any parents. But yeah. Anyway.
Okay. All right. Who's your mom?
My mom is Judy Floor. I did an interview with her. So
okay.
everyone knows.
Oh, good. I'd like to meet her. I don't know if I know her.
You can watch the interview on YouTube or my website, the macrobioticdiet.com. And I just want to finish that up. My website, the macrobioticdiet.com, I just updated it with an option to book an appointment with me, macrobiotics or astrology. You can go there and you can check out my YouTube channel, Joe Waxman on YouTube. I put all these videos there. So that's my plug.
Great. You should come join us on Eco Inspired Living and do a show with me.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Maybe I will.
Yeah. Right. That sounds great. It's called Eco Inspired Green Home. Mm-hmm. And it's just about living an environmentally safe, wonderful life.
Sounds great.
Thanks. Okay. Have a beautiful day. Have fun. Enjoy your life in this moment. Peace and best.
Bye-bye.
Take care.